Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohammed and today we're going to be discussing how we can create a Docker image of our .NET Web API. We're going to be going through step by step of what needs to be done. We're going to be explaining why do we need to add all of the information inside our Docker file so we can understand the full process of it. Before we get started into the actual coding, let us understand the fundamentals of Docker and why do we need it. And what I want to do is I want to create first of all my application. So let's consider this as my application and I'm gonna call this my API. So my API usually it does not run by itself. So usually it has requirement for a lot of different services. So it might have a requirement for an SDK. So would be my .NET SDK. That's I'm gonna put here .NET SDK. It will have requirements for class libraries. So it's going to have requirement for class libraries. It's going to have a requirement on specific configuration. And for example, this class libraries, it could have also different requirements. So this one has its own different configurations as well. So all of these will basically play a major role into facilitating how our application will work. This will actually allows us to run our application. So whenever my application is running, in order for it to actually start executing properly, what it does need to do, it actually needs to get all of this information. And once this information is available for my application, then my application will boot up. And then what I'm able to see, let's see here, a browser. And then once I have all of that, then I will be able to see my application inside a browser where I'm actually able to see the Swagger endpoint for this. So I'm having a browser and here I can, for example, see all of my Swagger information and my endpoints. So we can see here that our API does not live by itself. Although this is going to be a .NET API, it's going to require a lot of different configuration for it to work. And this configuration basically, it's going to allow us to make sure that our application is up and running and have everything that we need. And this is what we currently have within any of our examples that we have covered previously. We usually have a main application, we have some dependencies on different libraries, some specific configuration, and our .NET SDK available for us. So usually my .NET SDK is installed on the operating system, which is on my machine. So this is installed on my dev machine. The class libraries and the configurations for those class libraries are either available through my source code or on my dev machine. So it could be one or the other. Similarly to the configuration that the application that itself needs, it could be available on my machine or on my in my source code. So these are going to be the main building blocks. So now let's say I finished developing my application and everything is running smoothly. What's going to happen now if I want to deploy this? So whenever I want to deploy this, what do I need to do? I need to basically publish my application. And once I publish my application, I need to take the published version and put it on a server. So here, so let's say all of this is going to be currently on my local dev machine. So all of this simply is going to be running on my local dev machine. So let's take this. Let's take the drawing card and we can draw it like this. Local dev machine. Let's make this a bit bigger. Okay. So this is actually what's happening inside my application. All of these are actually running inside my local dev machine. So if I want to move this to a server, what do I need to do? So let's say now I want to move everything to my server. I need first of all to install my SDK. So that's going to be the first step, install my SDK. Then what I need to do is I need to get my configuration and configure my application again on my server. And then what I need to do is I need to take the output of my API and basically publish it into my server. So now that I have done this, here I'm going to have a published version of API and I'm going to have this available there. So once I have done that, I'm going to link my SDK to my APIs and my configuration as well. They're going to be linked to my API. So once I have done all of that, this can work. So for example, this can directly out of the box be able to work for me. But in some scenarios, this might not work because basically what I have here is I have a lot of dependencies. So I'm going to solve this server. So sometimes this might not work because sometimes the configuration rely on some OS configuration level. So it could be I have a different networking configuration that's needed, networking configuration that's going to be required for me to be able to run my application. And this is not, I did not do that. It was already configured on my local dev machine by default, but on my server, it didn't do that. The SDK version, the SDK that I have might installed here, it could have been a different version of the SDK. So here we need to make sure that I'm installing the right version of the SDK. So that could be the first layer of problem that I could be facing if I'm trying to deploy my application. Another potential problem that it could be from the networking point of view. So I'm gonna create another box here, and in order for my application to be running, I have to have my networking in place. And my networking will basically specify what are the input and the output that I'm gonna be needing, and basically make sure I'm configuring the right permissions for my inbound traffic and outbound traffic to access my application. So here we can see that this also needs to be configured directly on a two-way. And lastly, whenever I actually publish my file, I need to give it a permissions to the actual directory that it's going to be running on. So I'm going to put directory permission. Specifically, if we're trying to deploy it on IIS need to have read-write permission on that directory in order for it to actually utilize it as a web server, as a website inside its web server, in order for it to run. So we can see here that all of this is actually happening in the background whenever I need to deploy. So we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dependencies that actually needs to happen whenever I'm trying to create my application. And this is fine to a certain extent, but this requires a lot of manual work in order for me to do. So if I'm trying to scale up my application and to make sure that I'm not repeating the same mistake over and over again, and I want to have a more consistent deployment process than having to try to debug all of these different configuration, what can I do? I can actually utilize Docker. So Docker basically, in essence, what it does is it will take all of these different information that I currently have here and store it in a box. So basically Docker, in a few simple commands, what it does, it's gonna take all of this configuration, it's gonna store it in a box, and basically whenever I need to deploy, it will take this box, copy paste it to whatever it needs, and this box will already contain all of the different configuration, all of the different permissions, all of the different SDKs that it needs. It's gonna contain everything. So it's gonna contain the configuration, it's gonna contain the SDK, it's gonna contain the permissions, etc, etc. So this box that I'm gonna be utilizing here is gonna allow me to move everything that I need for my application. It's gonna allow me to move my deployed application directly from my local web environment to any server that I want to deploy. It could be dev server, test QA server, pre-prod production. As long as I have my Docker image built, I can basically move it. And here I utilize the keyword box because we put everything inside that box. So, but in essence, that's what Docker does. It takes all of the right configuration that my application used to run, and in order for it to execute, and put it inside this box. We can call this box a Docker image. And once installed, I can move this image to wherever I want, and then I can actually run my application through there. So this is in a very simple term, why do we need to have Docker and how does it work? Now, to actually containerize and basically create a Docker image for our application is going to be quite simple. So I'm going to go to my Visual Studio Code. And here, basically, this is the application that we have already worked on before, where I have my Formula 1 API, and this is a simple API which has a few controllers in it. It has a drivers controller, an achievement controller. It has a real dependencies on a class libraries, and this class library is going to be one to handling database items, and the other one is going to for handling all of the different entities. So what I want to do here is I want to basically containerize this application in order for it to run inside Docker. So how can I do that? It's pretty straightforward. All I'm going to do is I'm going to add a file, and this file I'm going to call it Docker file, because as soon as I put Docker file, we can see the icon change to a whale, which means that now I'm able to containerize. So once I have done that, the first step that I need to do is I need to utilize something called a base image. So I'm going to put from mcr.microsoft.com/.net/ASP.NET 8.0 as base. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm telling Docker, or basically this box that I'm going to be utilizing, that you're going to be of type .NET version 8, and I'm going to be utilizing you to do some work before I actually create the last version of this box. So basically I'm getting two boxes. The first box, I'm going to utilize it to basically experiment and do all of the work inside of it, and the second box is once I do my experimentation, the first one, I'm going to be utilizing it to store it inside the final one. So it's going to be something like this. So I'm going to have my first box, which is going to be as a base, so basically for testing purposes, and I'm going to have my production one. So basically I'm gonna do all of my work here when to copying my code, making sure it's configured correctly inside the box, and once it's actually configured, I'm gonna be moving this from my first box to the second box, and I'm gonna be only utilizing. So we can think about this box as a staging box for all of the work that I need to do. And basically prod here will be the final one, will contain all of the right information. So once I specified this, the next step is I need to specify a folder inside this box that's going to allow me to do the work, and I'm just going to call it /app. Then I need to expose what are the ports that I want to utilize, and I'm going to say I'm going to utilize port 8080 and expose also another port which is going to be 8081. So one could be for HTTP and other one for HTTPS. So now this is the first part. I told Docker that I need my box to be ready and as a flavor of ASP.NET version 8, and I'm told that I need to have a folder, and these are the ports. Then what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna take the same thing, which is gonna be from mcr.microsoft.com/.net/ SDK, and this is the SDK that I'm going to be utilizing, and this SDK is going to be allowing me to build my application, do all of the work that I need to do, and I'm going to say this as my build. So here basically I'm going to do all of the building for my application inside this box. So now all I'm going to say is I'm going to say that I need to provide it an argument. So if we know within .NET, I need to specify build configuration argument. So I'm going to say build underscore configuration, and inside there I'm going to say it's going to be of type release. So this application, whenever it's going to be building, it's going to be built as release. After that, inside this box, I need to specify my work directory, and then it's going to be also a folder called src. Once I have done that, now it's going to be the fun part where I actually need to copy my dependencies, because if we take a look at my application API here, if I open my CS Proj, we can see it's actually utilizing the data service class library. And if I go to my data service class library and if I open my CS Proj, we can see it's actually referring to the entities. So we can see that we have dependency upon dependencies. So that's why what I need to do is I need to copy the source code of my data service and my entities CS Proj into my Docker image in order for me to have them available for me inside that image. So to do that, again, quite simple. It's going to be formula1.API. We're going to start by the API, and I'm going to put formula1.API.pi.csproj, and I'm going to move it to formula1.API. So that's going to be the first one. I'm going to remove this, I don't need it. And I'm going to just copy this to make sure to copy the other two as well, rather than trying to retype everything. So this one is going to be, let's close this, for my data service. And I'm going to put it inside my data service, and this is going to be for my entities, and here entities. So now basically that I have copied these, and I'm told Docker that it needs to be stored inside my machine or my Docker image. All I'm going to say right now is run .NET restore, and I'm going to tell it that it needs to restore my formula1.API /formula1.API.csproj. So now what I'm doing is, once I copied everything, I'm telling .NET to do a full restore on this, because once it actually tries to restore all of this, if there is any missing dependencies, if there's any problem with my configuration or all of the NuGet package that I'm going to be needing, this will show up before it actually builds. So I can know exactly that once this is run successfully, that all of my application dependencies are there, and I can actually proceed to creating and building this. So once I have done that and it passed, now I'm going to copy the rest of the source code from my local directory to the actual Docker image. So to do this, I could copy everything from my local directory to my Docker image, and that's why I put dot here, means everything inside the first one to everything inside the second one. And then once I have done that, all I need to do is go to my API. So I'm going to put src. So this is the folder that we have created, and it's going to be the formula1.API. And because this is going to be my main entry point for my application, it's not going to be the data service or the entities, I need to publish this. So I'm going to run .NET build formula1.API.csproj, and I'm going to give it my configuration. So I'm going to say this is as build configuration, Let's remove these brackets, we don't need them. And then I specify where is it going to be built. So I'm going to say / the output is going to be /app / build. So now that I have done that, what I have done here basically is I published my application. I specified what type of it, and basically I specified the output folder for it. Quite straightforward. So once I have done this, the next step is I need to actually now copy it from this box that we set here to the production one. And to do this, I'm going to put from build, and build as referring to this item here. So this box that I currently have here as publish. So what I'm telling it is whatever I have taken from this build, just give it a different label as published, because we have published my application, and I'm just providing my argument for it, which is going to be my build configuration again, and this is going to be release. So I'm just going to copy paste this rather than typing it again, and then what I'm going to say here, run .NET publish formula1.api .csproj, and then I'm going to provide the same thing -c, and this is going to be the $ build configuration. Let's copy and remove this better. Again, I'm going to specify my output, and this is going to be app / publish. And lastly, I need to specify the app host. Do not use it, so I'm going to use app host. I'm going to say equal to false. So once we have done that, finally I need to actually finalize my deployment, which is going to be the last step that we do, which is going to be from base, and this is the base that we have created all the way here, which is contain the ASP.NET, which is a much smaller version than the SDK, which makes our image much more smaller. I'm going to say as the final image, and I'm going to specify my work directory that I have specified before, which is app, and I'm going to say that copy, and here I'm going to say from publish to /app / publish, copy everything. And lastly, I need to specify my entry point, and this entry point is going to take basically my .NET run command for it to run, and it's going to be formula1.api.dll. And this is it. So within 24 lines of code, what did I do? I was able to containerize my full Docker application, and this was able to work. And this will allow me to actually containerize my application quickly. So let's open my terminal. And just one thing before you start, you need to make sure that you have Docker installed on your machine. So as you can see here, I have Docker running. If I open my, where's my dashboard? If I open my dashboard, we can see here that I have Docker running inside my dashboard. We can see both of them are green, which means they are running. So let's put this on the side. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to open my terminal. And inside my terminal, I want to make sure that I'm in the right directory. Okay, perfect. And the command that I need to do in order for this to run is going to be quite simple. So because we're utilizing Docker, I need to put Docker, and then I need to put my command, which is going to be, I want to build this image. Then I need to specify the tag. So I want to give it a name for this image. So I'm just going to call it F1 API. And then I put dot because it needs to find my Docker file. And when I put a dot, it means that it's in the same directory where I'm executing this command. So if I click on enter now, basically what it does, it will get Docker image first. And we can see I have already some error in my code. So let's see what is this error. It's telling me that something is not found. So let's check this right now. Maybe I have a typo. So for Formula1 API, let's see asproj. Okay, here I have it. Oh, that's my problem. So I put here data service. And this needs to be entities, and this one API is not capital case. So let's save this and run this again. Let's do a clear, and let's run this again. And now we can see it's actually what it's doing is actually downloading my base images that I have, which is my ASP.NET and my SDKs for me to utilize. This will take usually a few seconds because you can see here the size is big. So we'll continue once they're finished. So now that they are actually doing, we can see here that they copied the file. They're executing the .NET restore. Once the .NET restore is executed successfully, we'll resume. So we can see here it executed successfully. It copied the directory. It now run the .NET build inside my folder that I have specified. Now it's publishing it. And now that it has published it, it's telling me that I can access this. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to go back to my Docker dashboard, and I'm going to click on images. And here, I'm going to just refresh. And as you can see here, I have my F1 API, which has been created 34 seconds ago. And if I click on it, we can see here that I have all of my information, and we can see that I'm utilizing .NET 8. It's having all of the commands that I have specified. We can see the work directory that exists. We can see the endpoint that currently exists. As well, we can see here that the entry point, which is going to be executed when it runs, and basically we can see all of the different layers that has happened in order for my application to run. If I click here on images, we can see that it's actually built on a .NET image that I have created previously, or basically I have utilized previously. And we can see here some of the packages that it's utilizing. Because it's .NET, it's a Linux version of .NET, so it's relying on Debian, and this is all of the packages currently exist. We can explore them all if we want. We can see the different version of them. And here we can see that because my API is utilizing Automapper, we can see that my packages is already installed. So if we take, for example, at Automapper, this is version 12.0.1.0. So if I go here to my API version, my Formula1.api, if I click on the CS Proj and I go to Automapper, we can see it's the same version exists here as here. So we can see Automapper 12.0.1, 12.0.1. If I go more even, like to these are all Microsoft components. So let's take the Open APIs, which is 8.0. So let's see if we can find this. Where is it? There's a lot. Let's search for it. Open API. So we can see here that the Open API that we are utilizing is also going to be version 8.0, which is going to be the one that we're going to be referring to. So all of that is going to be automatically available for us because we have just built our image through Docker. Now, if I want to run it, it's going to be quite simple. Again, it's going to be Docker, the command, and then it's going to be the keyword run. I need to specify the port that I want to connect to. So I want to connect from my machine on port 8080 to the port that I have specified inside my Docker image, which is going to be also port 8080. And then once I have done that, I can basically say that which image I want to run. And in my case, it's going to be called the F1 API. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to put this one here and I'm going to run it. Now we can see that my application is running on port 8080 and I can access it. Because I have deployed it as a production, I will not have access to Swagger. But this will show you that it's actually can work. I'm able to access my application and it's running through Docker. I hope this video was helpful. It's just a quick introduction about Docker and .NET. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the comments down below. Have a great day.